Hello and welcome to IT Security Labs. Today we're going to be completing a lab that I created. It's called doubleSQL. This is going to be on a new platform called CyberTask. I've been creating these labs inspired by my experience with the OSCP and OSEP. My goal is to give you the more realistic labs that are not as CTFE like the capture the flags that you see in other platforms. So if you're interested, please check out this lab that I created, and this will teach you the skills that you need to pass the OSCP, OSEP, and even other certification exams out there that I haven't taken. But the goal here is we have a very realistic lab, and it's going to teach us three things. We'll learn about SQL injection, how to break into a site when there is a SQL vulnerability. Then we'll learn about Microsoft SQL servers. How do we interact with them when we have access to those servers? Can we use them for pivoting? Meaning, if they are linked servers, can we exploit them? Can we use those servers to give us NTLM hashes that we can crack? Maybe we can use those servers to execute commands on other linked SQL servers. Then finally, we'll show you how to use network pivoting using Chisel in this case, so that we can access a remote network that's not on the subnet where we are. This lab is packed with a lot of really cool stuff, and if you're interested in really getting that nitty-gritty and getting good at some of those realistic things, this is definitely for you. So first, I put a description here that the objective for us is to learn hands-on on SQL injection and network pivoting. And our first task here says that you have been hired as a pen tester by a prestigious cybersecurity firm, and your task here is to break into this network. Your client has given you the first IP address, 10.0.1.4. That's pretty much it. They said, hey, here's your initial access. And by the way, you can access this lab on CyberTask. I'll make it alive by the time I publish this video, and you can join and interact with this lab yourself. If you're interested in that, please join CyberTask, and I'll link to my lab in the description below. It could be free, or you may have to pay. I'll figure out what happens, but either way, you have access to this lab. So first, we have an IP address. How do we interact with this thing? First, we grab that IP address. That's our initial access. And if you say show machines here, we'll notice that we have our SQL Server private IP address of 10.0.1.4, and it's already running. You might have to start your lab. And then we have our Kali attacker here. And we do have the credentials for Kali, which is root Kali. And you can just start this Kali and join using this RDP button right here. When you click the RDP button, you just get access to your Kali in a browser. This is super simple and straightforward. The first time you start your Kali, you will be asked if you want to allow copy paste. Please accept that. You will need to say yes if you want copy paste to work. Otherwise, once we get into Kali, I launch the terminal and say nmap. Can you give me svsc? In this case, I actually want ping, and then I'll paste the IP address. And then I'm outputting to a file called nmap initial access here. We can also do -vv if we wanted to for verbose. And this will just get started. As you can see, I'm seeing a lot of ports here that show that this is a Windows machine. And I'm seeing port 80 as well. So while all these are loading, I'll visit port 80. And to do that, we just go and open our browser. And the most important thing here is we can multitask, right? It's scanning. The scanning can happen in the background while we look at other things. And you should do that for your OSCP or OSEP. Don't wait there until the results are done. Just right away get going, even in real world engagements as well. All right, so I need to give this my IP address. All right, so here we see that we have this IP address, then /login system. So this shows me that this is a CMS server. If you look in the URL here, and also the thing that loaded here says user registration and user management system with admin panel. We can also maybe view the page source, see what this thing is. Maybe it tells us. Okay, I don't know what this thing is doing, but for now, we have not registered yet, so we can sign up for a user, but you need to register there. If you already have an account, you can try here. Let's go to the admin panel here. can say login. All right, when we go to the admin panel and look at the bottom here, we see that we're going to PHP Guru. This is a popular website that shows you PHP projects that people have created. Some of them are good, some of them are terrible, but that will not show us anything. Registration in login system, admin login. Okay, admin password. Let's give it a go. Okay, incorrect username and password. Let's try SQL injections here. We're trying to see if the username value is injectable. And put anything in the password here. Invalid username and password. So we tried injection, didn't work. Now next, before we move on and start doing anything else, let's look up this name here, login system, because that's the name of the actual CMS, login system exploit. All right, I see exploit DB. So this is classic for like the OSCP, OSEP. They like exploit DB or GitHub or someone's blog. Those three are usually more common. So it says user registration. This one is a cross-site scripting though, so I'm not interested in cross-site scripting as much. Unauthenticated injection, the second one. That's the one that we want. All right. So it says user registration and that, something like that. And this looks like the same thing that we have, login system, and we can go to /admin. And they're saying enter this in the username field and anything in the password. So do we have a different SQL payload that starts with a star? So these are the steps that you would take if you were doing this. And sometimes you don't know like what the instructions mean, right? So you kind of have to keep trying until you find something that works. So let's try it again. Paste. Move the star. Is it just like that? Okay. So if you didn't know like what they mean, just don't give up the first time. I knew that this was the vulnerability because I set this label up, but I just wanted to show you that sometimes you actually have to, keep trying a few things and different variations. Of course, this might get you caught, but that's not what we're concerned about here. So once we get in here, we can go to the dashboard. We're hoping to see user passwords. So it says user registrations, total users. So we see that there's a user, SVC SQL, and the domain is dev.itsecurity.labs.local. And that user was created there. Let's see if we can edit. We cannot do anything about this user from here. So we know this works. Next, let's see what we need to do then according to the exploit. So step 2 works. Now that we successfully logged in as admin, to download all the data from the database, use the below commands. Log in to the admin portal and capture the request. Save the intercepted request to a file, then use SQL map. So let's go ahead and use SQL map. First, we are going to need burp suite. I'll go to web application analysis. Here is my burp suite. I hope this is a newer version of burp, because we're going to use burp suite browser and capture that request. All right, with burp suite started, we go to proxy. Let's open its browser. It's going to complain about something about allow this to run without sandbox. That's how we fix it. Then we close. Now, if we open the browser again, there we go. Okay, first, before we interact with the browser, our proxy is off. Let's grab the URL from our Chrome. So this was the actual URL to sign in. Now let's go to our Chromium browser and paste that one in there. It's going to ask us to log in. Let's maximize that browser here so that we see. Let's log in. We say admin and password is test pass. That's what I want to set it to. Then it's send interception on. Now log in. Here's my username and password, admin and test pass. So they say to save this to a file. Right click, save item, I think. Then I'll just choose in the root directory here. I can say SQL capture. Let's get SQL SQL capture. Did we capture it correctly? This is not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that request to look exactly the way it is. So I'm not sure what happened there. Let's go back and do it again. That looks way, way better. We can now go to our browser, in this case, Chromium, and here it said we can just run this command. I think we have SQL map already installed in this curly. If we don't, we can find it. And then we say that, but everything that we want here is in this file. And we run it. Let's see if this will go. By the way, SQL map is not allowed for the OSCP. It's allowed for the OSEP. But there's a way you can do this by hand as well. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. We can do this again by hand for those who are going for the OSCP. But SQL map is very loud. It will probably get you caught. But in this case, we're running it because it's the easiest way to get to our target here. So let's go and just accept all the defaults. So I'm not accepting anything. All right. So fetching number of entries for table admin in database login system. So it's doing something. It retrieved a username. It retrieved a password. All right. I'll let it go. All right. So while SQL map is doing its thing, it's retrieving the information from the database. Let's go and check our nmap results here to try to understand them. And again, being able to multitask is a very important thing for us. So we saw a lot of things. Our port 80 is what we are working on. And the system is a login system. We notice that we have a sql.internal.cloudapp.net login system. That's another DNS name. And then we saw that it's IT Security Labs on the other one. But here we looks like we have two DNS servers here at play. But we don't care. We just want to break in. And then the rest of these ports, other than 443, which is tied to the same port 80, are just Windows ports. But let's keep going. We notice that here we have 1433, which is the Microsoft SQL 1433. And this is a very interesting port because most of the time, unless if there is like linking with an external service or remote administration, this port is usually not exposed to the external network. It's just, local connection. But in this case, we actually have access to this remotely. So we should be able to try to sign in if we have credentials or try to sign in as anonymous, but that won't work out for us. These are just Windows. So, and here we know that it's SQL 01 and the domain is dev.itsecurity.labs.local. So if this is dev, that means that there's prod somewhere. That's another hint for us here as we go through these things. But that's our nmap results. Now let's look here. Do you want to store hashes to a temporary file for eventual further processing with other tools? Yes. Let's go and crack the hash. Do you want to crack the hash? Yes. Do you want to use common password suffix? No. Just go and crack the hash. All right. So here it looks like we have admin. It says no clear text password found for admin. Okay. Okay. So after a while, you notice that the password for SVSQL has been cracked and its password, which is interesting. So we'll just copy that and we'll document it. And then where do we use this password? We can go and try to sign in as SVSQL on the website and see what we can find there. Maybe we have more information, but if you do, in this case, you won't find much. So what we can do is we're going to take that password, go back to our results. We already noticed that we had Microsoft SQL, and Microsoft SQL on 1433 is known for using SVC. So now we need to connect to see if we can try to connect using the username and password that we found here. So for us to do that, we use MSSQL client.py. So locate MSSQL client.py because we should have one. Then let's get this binary here. I like to copy. and put it right here. And then I can say MSSQL Python 3. So in this case, my autocomplete is completing for something else. But let's say for SVC, the SQL at 10.0.1.4. Actually, let's tell it that we want Windows auth, because that syntax won't work. So Windows auth. This allows us to sign into the SQL Server. And then let's give it the password P4SSW0RD star that we found from there, and we're in. So now that we know we can interact with the SQL Server, we now need to do a few things here. First, we need to know our permissions and everything. So I need to find a document that shows us how to do that. If we go to Hacktricks, there's this document here on Hacktricks for pentesting SQL, Microsoft SQL Server 1433. Great tool, by the way. If you need any documentation, it shows you like, hey, if you see this, in this case, we see actually it's 2017. Here's how you enumerate it. We're not using Metasploit here. We're just using commands, common enumeration. So get version. All right, we can run commands. In this case, it's a 2017 version 14. Okay, so in this case, we don't have any special databases. So we can list some users, or we can find linked servers. All right, so as you can see, we are lucky here that we have linked servers. So SQL 01 is where we are. And then we have another server here shown by the IP address. You could have shown by its name as well, but we have another linked server. Okay, so do these credentials also allow us to sign in? We can try to see if we can use EvilWinRM and see if this is going to work. Password is P4SSW0RD star. We can also try RDP, because RDP is open. But most of the time, these service accounts do not have that access. So this is not going to work. Okay, we can list some users, but that's not what we're interested in. Create a user with sysadmin privs. I don't think that will work for us. Let's see if we can execute commands. And it's going to show up somewhere here. Yeah, this check if the command execution is enabled. So let's check using this one. That will be probably the better option. And the order is we check command execution. If command execution is not there, we try to capture the NTLM hash of whoever is running. So when we do a select here, we see that nothing shows up. Let's see if we can enable command execution. And we just go here. We expect to see whether permission denied or if it works. If it's permission denied, then we can try to impersonate another user, but in this case, we do not have permissions. That's a classic thing, because by default, you don't have permission. What we do have permissions on, though, sometimes is we can try to force capture the NTLM hash of whoever this service is running, because just because we signed in as SVC does not necessarily mean that the service is running as that user. It's probably running as maybe another user. Maybe it's running in a context of SA, which might be even better. So let's see if we can capture some NTLM hash. We cannot configure it. We know that. So what we probably need to do is here. X-directory. I think I like this one. So in order for us to capture the NTLM hash here, what we need to do is we need to come back here and say, okay, we'd like to run a command. Where they say anything, I'll just say share. And this is going to try to force NTLM authentication to us. I'm giving it a share. So it's 10.0.1.5. That's my curly. But before I run that, let me come back to my curly here. Coming back to my curly, I can say responder. I'd like it to listen on if0, and I'm putting V for verbose. So I'm starting responder here because if0, that's where I'm listening on. And with the responder running, I can force trigger NTLM hash. And this vulnerability is the same as the one that was in Outlook a few weeks ago, where if you pointed Outlook calendars to a share, it tried to authenticate to those shares using NTLM hash. NTLM authentication. That's the same thing here. And it will reach out. One thing that can happen is we'll get SVC hash. In this case, we get this NTLM hash for SVC Bob. So we have a second user that we didn't have before. So if you got in as public, try to capture the NTLM hash using this way. Now that we have this NTLM hash, we need to crack it. Copy that. We'll quit responder because we don't need it anymore. Nano NTLM hash. We'll paste it in there. Okay. Control X. Y, enter. Cat NTLM hash. There we go. Okay, so looking through one more article. This one is cracking NTLM v2. Let's check and make sure that we... Oh, I think it was v2. This looks like v2 to me. And when you cat, that's what it looks like. They're cracking it using hashcat. I guess we'll use hashcat then. rowq.txt. Let's see if we have rowq.txt. Okay, so rowq.txt is zipped. We need to unzip that. G unzip rowq.txt. This will take a second because this is a very big file. Now, here's a wiki. Let's search for NTLM here. Our net NTLM v2 is 5600, and they want the format like that. Let's try again with hashcat. And I'm using rowq.txt. See. All right, looks like we got a match. So for you, if you're going to be following along later, I'm going to change the password here so that you can actually crack it yourself. But in this case, we see summer 2020 is the password. But it's going to be different if you're going to be doing it yourself again. So you need to crack it to find out what the new password will be that I would have updated in the lab. Okay, so we have a user SVC Bob, and we have their password that we captured. This is an actual NTLM hash. So this is for an account that reached out. So because of that, we'll try if winrm again. This time it's SVC Bob. And the password is summer 2020, which will be different for you. Let's see if it lets us in. Yes, we are in. So if you say dir here, you will not see some of these tools. I was just playing around with them earlier, but we can see that we are in. Okay. So now that we are in, what can we do? Who am I? Such O. So here what I'm looking for is, oh, I am already an administrator. We're also part of the remote desktop users, remote management users. So let's use RDP to get in there. So I'll keep this one here. I like both winrm and RDP, but I also channel XRDP. XRDP as user Bob. The password is summer 2020. Make sure to do that. And if you want shared clipboard, that's what it will do. And dynamic resolution will just give us the resolution. So this will be what Bob looks like. And since we're part of the remote desktop users, we can just do that. If we were not part of remote desktop users, we could have used that same access that we had to enable RDP. That way we can still access things. And when we do that, we notice right away that flag 1 is on the desktop for Bob. And this is what flag 1 looks like. And good thing is we have copy paste, so we should be able to copy it from out there and come back to our tasks, because we still have to answer some questions, right? What is the name of the service that's running. Submit that one. All right, so that's the correct answer. What is the name of the CMS service that's running? That's the actual name. All right, we found flag 1. Now we need to find flag 2. Escalate your privileges on this to find flag 2. Wow, I'm already administrator here. So escalating the privileges is really not going to be the biggest thing here. But for now, let's go and what other users are here? I guess I should just use this instead. Net user. So I had SVC Bob. Now I have another user Bob. If I say there and I can read, that means that my admin, all right, there we go. Flag 2 is here. So there was no need for escalation there. In future iterations, I can actually make it harder. But for now, I figured SQL stuff is enough for one room. Let's focus on that. And then you have other rooms where we can focus on evasion and privilege escalation. Now that you have fully compromised the first target, what is the other network subnet? Here, we want to learn about pivoting, right? So now that we know that we are on this machine, a couple of things, right? IP config shows us this IP address, but also notice that we have 192.168.5.56. That's an IP address that we were not given. It doesn't have a default gateway here, but in most cases it would. So that's what we are being asked there, is what is the other subnet? In this case, it's 192.168.5.0. Okay, flag 3. Pivot to the other network and access flag 3 on the user's desktop. It's not going to be that simple, right, to just pivot. First of all, we need to know, like, what other network are they talking about? How do we pivot there? And things like that. Well, lucky for us, from our results here, we had already seen that we have another linked SQL Server. When we ran this command, we saw that we have 192.168.5.4, which is another linked SQL Server, and it's linked to this current SQL that we have here. So we might be able to do the same exact thing where we can execute this xdir and capture the NTLM hash on the other machine. But I put a very secure password. You won't be able to crack it even if you get it. So we need to be able to execute commands on this other SQL Server using this SQL Server. Or we can also set up pivoting using Chisel in this case, which is my favorite tool. So here is a document that I found tunneling through Windows with Chisel. You go to this repo machine and you download Chisel for Linux, and then you download Chisel for Windows. And let's go and visit that site. So here's the releases. So for Linux, you want this one. Download that one as well. You can just show it in folder. Right click, extract. Right click, extract. Okay, so now that we extracted, we have two binaries, right? We have Chisel. That's the one for Windows. Let's extract that one too. Oh yeah, this one, I think. Okay, so here's Chisel and Chisel.exe. So I'll copy that. And we can just copy it straight to our Windows machine since we have RDP with copy paste enabled. So I can just put it on the desktop. All right, so that's my Chisel. Let me make sure that I rename that. So my Windows machine. Now let's make sure that I open my command prompt, run it as an administrator. I'm already an admin here, so this is good stuff. CDC, users, SVC, Bob, desktop. Okay, so now that that is ready for my Kali, I also need to go to my binary cd downloads. Right, so if I do that, here's my Chisel for Linux, and then we just finish. What do they say? First, we need to make sure that Chisel is executable on Linux. And Chisel is going to allow us to give us access to the other network, by the way. That's what is happening here. And then say Chisel server on port 9002. Okay, server is running. Now we just need to go to our Windows machine and run the client. Same deal. Chisel client, Kali IP. Actually, I don't want to do specific port. This documentation is not going to do me justice. I think this one will. So I do have a membership here, but for those who don't have a membership, I will not show you that. Instead, let me just show you the commands to run. We want this. So the Chisel server on port 8000 reverse, and then we go to our victim and we tell them Chisel client, and we tell them that we're using SOX. That's what we want. Let's see if I can copy this and paste, or if this is going to be. Oh, there we go. So Chisel client, Chisel, since it's on my desktop and I'm running it in client mode, I'm going to my attacker machine on the same port and I'm running SOX. This will allow us, give us access to the full network. And it says connected. So that's simple. For the OSCP, OSEP, you need that part there, because they like to give you tunneling. Okay, now that we did that, we should now have access to the other SQL server, but that's not what we are here for though. We want to make sure that we can also hopefully access our Kali back here. So the syntax here, I have it pre-canned. I'll show you what we're doing here. We're saying, hey, execute system directory, the same share command that captured NTLMH last time. So we can execute anything that we want and put it in here. Being aware of the quotes, at then the server that we found, the remote server. So this is us from SQL 1 executing on SQL 2. And if this works, our responder should capture the NTLM hash of whoever is running that service on SQL 2. Responder, again, responder is listening. If responder gives us something, we know that we can communicate. Notice that on SQL 2, we have Bob. So to make it less easier, I made sure that this hash here is, of a very, very complicated password. So you won't be able to do anything with this. Okay. So now that we know that we can execute commands, what else can we do? And we can get back here from that machine. That means now we need to see if we can enable running commands. Here, let's see if we have command shell commands enabled. So we use that part there. And it's the same command, but we're going to replace. You have to be very careful when dealing with this. Replace that part and paste. Okay, so first, notice that this single quote needs to be escaped. You need to be very, very diligent with this. Okay, so nothing. So we'll keep doing that until we find something. So we know that there's nothing, no command shell. Let's see if we can turn it on. Here we might get the error that we do not have permission. In that case, we need to impersonate someone. If we do have permission, it will ask us to reconfigure. So one way or the other, we'll find out. And then we just up arrow. This time we're going to remove that last command. And we're going to paste a new one. But we need to escape those single quotes. Remember, those single quotes will send you around in circles if you're not aware of them. So here's another one. I'm just escaping them by putting a second quote. Okay, it says show advanced option 1, change from 1 to 1. Run reconfigure. Oh, that's good. That means that we do have sysadmin rights here. In this case, I need to say reconfigure. So that should have said from 0 to 1. I forgot to reset it after I was done setting up the lab. So for you, it will say from 0 to 1. All right, so reconfigure was done, which is what Hectrix was going to show us here. Then if you really wanted, you can also just do this again and reconfigure. There's a one-liner coming, but we can also deliver a payload and execute it from here. But sometimes that means you need to encode your data so that it doesn't get corrupted. So here I'm just putting a double quote. All right, it's saying now we can rerun, reconfigure again. Boom, now we can run any commands that we want. And how do we do that? They should show us here. So now that we did that, we can now run the exec master. And here's how we can get a reverse shell. Maybe we can try a reverse shell. If I paste that, double quote around who am I, and anything else that we want. So we are in as SVC02 Bob. And we know Bob is an admin on our box. If this is the same company, there's consistency. That means that Bob is an admin on the other machine. So we need to really see, can we get a reverse shell on that machine and become Bob? Okay. So now that we know we can run any command, let's see. Who am I works. Can I just say dir C users Bob desktop, because that's where the flags are usually. Yeah, here's flag 3. So we can get the flag from here by just saying type flag 3.text. All right, we looted the flag, but we are not happy with that. We need to get a reverse shell as well. But we found flag 3. So if we were just worried about that, that's what we'll give them here. And submit. And then here's the conclusion. We focus on SQL injection, command execution, pivoting using Chisel, and some privilege escalation if we had a chance. So that will complete the lab here. Please make sure to like the lab if you find it helpful, because this is how most people will know about my lab on CyberTask. Otherwise, let's go back and get a reverse shell. So the way that we'll get a reverse shell is the same that they're talking about here. They're saying echo IEX new object download string. What are they downloading? ref.ps1 to PowerShell. Okay, so they generated a PowerShell reverse shell here. And this is the IP address of Kali Linux. And they have a file called ref.ps1. Because I'm lazy, I'm going to create another one, my own file called ref.ps1 in my Kali as well. File, new tab, nano, ref.ps1. Okay, I need stuff in ref.ps1. So I'm just going to refshells.com. I'm going to say 10.0.1.5 on port, I guess, 4444. In this case, I want it to be a reverse shell for Windows. In this case, we're using PowerShell. So I think I used PowerShell 2 last time, or PowerShell 1. I'll just use this one. Number 1. And then we'll come back here. I'll just paste that in there. Y, get me cat ref.ps1. Just make sure that it works. naked-lv and p on 4444. Let's go to this machine here and just open PowerShell. We need to test, make sure that this thing is actually, doing what it's supposed to do. So we paste everything here and run it. It hangs, but I don't care because I just want to make sure that it works. ID. No. Who am I? Okay, so we actually get some, minimal shell, but it's still a shell. So I'll take that. Now let's do Python 3 -m http.server on 80 because that's the port that we want. And we are ready to go and give them the long, ugly command. Okay, so after playing around, I ran this command curl to get that rev.ps1. I think there we go. So curl works. I'm getting a get request here. So I need curl-o. So whatever is happening there, we don't care. We're going to run using curl. Okay, now that we know that that's working, -o rev.ps1. Okay, now that we did that, let's check to see if it's there. I didn't even check which directory we're in. There. Oh, where are we? You know what? I don't want to find it here. So this will be in C, Windows, tasks, rev.ps1. Then let's just do a dir on this. See if we can see our rev.ps1. Dir that. Okay, rev.ps1 is in our temp folder. Now, how do we execute that sucker? I think we can say PowerShell.ep. If that doesn't work, we'll just put netcat and get a netcat reverse shell that way. EP bypass and run that. Okay, it's hanging. That's good. Okay, we downloaded it. Yeah, we got a connection, people. Get UID. Where am I? What happened? I thought I got a connection here. Okay, here it is. SQL Bob. There. Oof. This is not ideal. PWD. CDC. Windows. No, users. Bob. Desktop. Dir. Type. Egg. 3.txt. So this will actually not work. This will not be acceptable as a flag for the OSEP. I think this needs to be a fully functional shell, not this one that I'm interacting with here. So I would actually upgrade this to a fully functional one by maybe bringing in a Metasploit payload and executing it instead of this. But for now, I'm happy with what we have done. And if you like this, if you are benefiting from this, please let me know in the comments. Give me a thumbs up. I just need that feedback so that I know that the amount of time we're spending here is worth it. Otherwise, thanks very much for being here, and I hope to see you next time. Try this lab. The link is in the description.